Good afternoon, and welcome back for another episode of From Where I Sit. I'm your host, Dr. C. All right, so this is our next long lecture, and we want to welcome you for that. We're going to be talking about the economics of African Americans in the during the turn of the century, the early 1900s. And I want to discuss the economics of African Americans during this time because I think it is very important and has some great lessons to teach us today in terms of what we ought to be doing in the age of Trump. Okay. In other videos and other lectures before this one, I have advocated that the Black community should be supporting the Black community. We should be doing our spending, our banking, everything that we ought to be doing for each other. And the reason why I say that is because we cannot depend on the federal government or any kind of government in this country ever again to help us to achieve the success that we all desire. It is up to us to do that. And I'll explain why that is important. What we're going to do is we're going to show you some historical videos and pictures and some verbiage to discuss exactly what was happening to the Black community around this country in the early 1900s, specifically right after a lot of African Americans, Black folks, Black men and women were getting back to the United States of America after World War I. So without further ado, let's get straight to it. So yes, this is Black Wall Street. That's what we're really going to call this. Economic excellence destroyed by hate. We will discuss the Greenwood District in Tulsa, Oklahoma of 1921, Rosewood, Florida of 1923, Atlanta of 1906, the Red Summer in Chicago of 1919, East St. Louis, not Missouri, but Illinois, excuse me for that, of 1917, Red Summer in Washington, D.C. of 1919, and lessons for the Black community today. That's what we're going to discuss in today's lecture. And so we're going to get straight to it, and we're going to introduce you to our first actual historical video so that you can get an idea of where we are going with this. All right, so let's cue up the video.
All businesses need balanced books to stay alive. It's simple math. Take discount law firms. With less coming in,
we'll go ahead and skip these commercials.
But it's cutting corners on your pace.
It's the roaring 20s. The country is flourishing. Some African American communities are prospering, like the residents of Greenwood in Tulsa, Oklahoma. A remarkable Baptist pastor named Solomon Sir Jones is the pioneering filmmaker. His footage was lost for more than 50 years. Jones captures the bustling life of Greenwood, which could be any American small town. But Tulsa's whites don't like what they see. In May 1921, after a Black man is accused of assaulting a white woman, a white mob rampages through the city. For a night and a day, they loot and burn Greenwood. Fox News crew captures the only surviving footage. It is the bloodiest racial massacre in American history, leaving nearly 300 dead.
So before we get to our next video on Rosewood, Florida, I think it's important for everyone to understand during this time. By the way, this is also right at the same time when they instituted Jim Crow in the South. And it was always in order to massacre or burn down or destroy Black economic excellence in this country. There was always somebody blaming somebody for assaulting or raping a white woman. This is really the same tactic that they used over and over and over again. And here's the other thing that I think is important to understand. White supremacy has been a cancer, a disease wrought by the white community in this country from the 1600s. And they use this idea of white supremacy to destroy so that so it can fit their narrative that Blacks in this country, former slaves in this country, were inferior to white folks. And every time something, and by the way, this happened again and again and again and again. Yes, Black communities always figured out a way to thrive in this godforsaken country. And every time we figured out a way to thrive, they would go out of their way to try and destroy it. And the reason why is because it did not meet the narrative that Black people in this country were inferior to whites. And of course, if you haven't figured it out already, it just simply is not true. White supremacy is a political construct in order for whites to maintain and keep power in America. Now, before I get to the next video here, Rosewood, Florida of 1923, as you're probably going to see, a lot of these videos are very, very similar because it's the same tactics and the same hateful acts again and again and again. And look, I know that this can kind of get a little bit redundant and the images can be kind of off-putting, but this is exactly what happened in this country in the 1917s, the 1918s, 19s, and the 20s. This is what white terrorists did to thriving Black communities across the country. There's no getting around it. I don't have to lie about it. The videos, the articles that you'll pull up. I mean, by the way, you can find all this stuff on Google, on YouTube. I mean, this information is widely available for everyone and from great sources. The last video was from the Smithsonian Institute. Okay? This is what happened. This is part of this country's past. Let us take a look at our next video. Again, we'll skip the ad.
With Place Alerts by Life 360.
Why is it important to have an attorney assigned right away to your injury case?
They came on the first day of January and they did not stop burning and shooting and hanging and lynching until January the 7th.
It's a story that's rarely talked about, but it needs to be told. A dark moment in our state's history. The town of Rosewood was a small, predominantly Black community, not too far from Gainesville. It was destroyed at the hands of an angry, racist mob. All that's left, their descendants who continue to tell their story.
We were entrepreneurs. We had businesses. We had 3 churches in Rosewood. I mean, and this is in the early 1900s.
Rosewood is a part of Ebony Pickett's family history. She never lived there, but she can tell you all about it through stories handed down through 5 generations.
Everybody's lawns was manicured and there was roses all around, and it was almost like this picture perfect place.
That picture shattered on New Year's Day, 1923, when a mob of white men invaded Rosewood, burning homes and churches and shooting people as they fled.
They came on the first day of January and they did not stop burning and shooting and hanging and lynching until January the 7th.
Pickett remembers being a young girl at family reunions and listening to the stories from the mouths of survivors.
When I would see the horror on their face, and then they would begin to wail and cry and, console each other. And it was like so emotional, and it was such a vivid picture because this wasn't just something I was reading in a book.
1923. The black town of Rosewood was a land of opportunity.
In 1997, Warner Brothers produced a movie about the town's history, bringing what happened on that tragic day to the big screen. The film, based on accounts at the time of what started the attack, allegations from a white woman in the neighboring community of Sumner that a black man had assaulted her. Pickett disputes that narrative. She says family members told her.
Okay, so there you go. Yes, the same story, just like in Tulsa, Oklahoma, somebody got accused of sexually assaulting a white woman. And then this kicks off this violent mob to invade this town and kill tens, hundreds maybe of blacks in this community.
It was actually a white man who assaulted the white woman. Pickett's relative, Sarah Carrier, known as Aunt Sarah, was there.
And Aunt Sarah had been at her home that day, as well as with her granddaughter, Philomena. So both of them witnessed the white man that actually came into their home that she was with.
Aunt Sarah told the mob it was not true, but they didn't take her word. She would eventually be killed in the massacre.
These were my actual family members that was there and had remembered everything they had gone through. And they shared it with us, but they told us we could not tell anyone for fear that, the white mob would come back and kill them.
98 years later, their stories are still being told so that we may remember and never forget. And 8 people died during the Rosewood Massacre. 6 were black, 2 were white. In 1994, Florida provided financial compensation to some of the Rosewood survivors, but family members tell me it's impossible to measure the human cost of what happened on January 1st, and nothing in the world that can compensate for it.
They came on the first day of January.
All right, so that's Rosewood. Sorry about the delay. I'm still mastering this technology, everyone. But like I said before, the most important thing is to make sure that you get this vital information so that you can make better choices for your family and your communities today. That's Rosewood. Again, same story, same refrain, same thing. And it kind of gives you a general idea, It gives you a general idea of why was it so important for whites during this time to make sure that the black community in this country could not get ahead. Well, if you remember from one of my last videos, we talked about the construct of whiteness and why the very wealthy in this country in the 1600s came up with the idea in order to separate their indentured servants, which typically were from European whites, in black slaves and servants during this time, because if these two groups got together, they could affect major political change against the wealthy class of the time. And if you really think about it right now, they're still doing it today. Donald Trump, in my opinion, it's just my opinion, but I think that this opinion is based on fact, got elected because the oligarch class in this country, Elon Musk and all of the rich cronies that gave money and resources to Trump's campaign basically said that the other is the enemy of white working class Americans. And when we say the other, it's the immigrants, Black people, transgender people. It's always somebody else that they're going to demonize in order to separate the white working class from everybody else. And that's how he got elected. Okay. If you look throughout history, the same strategy is used again and again and again. And every Republican candidate for president used the same strategy. Okay. They use the same strategy. And they're still doing it today. They did it in the past and they're doing it today. So let's get to Atlanta, Georgia of 1906. And of course, there were some photos, but I think just kind of reading this verbiage and then discussing it later is probably more important. And the reason why is because I live here in the Atlanta metro. And so I'm very connected to this city. So let's see what they wrote about. And by the way, this is from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. The emergence of a Black elite in Atlanta also contributed to the racial tensions in the city. Excuse me. During Reconstruction of 1867 through 76, Black men gained the right to vote. And as Blacks became more involved in the political realm, they began to establish businesses, create social networks, and build communities. As this Black elite acquired wealth, education, and prestige, its members attempted to distance themselves from the Black working class, and especially from the Black men who frequented the saloons on Atlanta's Decatur Street. Now, the reason why I have this up here is because, once again, these Black men, working class men who frequented the saloons on Decatur Street, probably was accused of attempting to rape or sexually assault a white woman. And so these riots in Atlanta in 1906 erupted, and yes, they had to call in the National Guard. There's lots of pictures, there's lots of stories about this. It is the same refrain again and again and again, right? And when we get to our next slide, which here's Red Summer in Chicago, Illinois. Just take a look at the picture. Let me move this a little bit more. Okay, so you got a better look at the picture. Says here, attend the Loop rally against lynching Monday, September 16th at 5 p.m. Yes, this in 1919 was called Red Summer. It didn't just happen in Chicago. It happened in cities all over the country where white working class men were angry that men from the Black community who came back from the war were looking for good jobs in the North, in the Northeast, in the Midwest, etc. And white working class men were upset that these men that were returning from the war, Black men that were returning from the war, were going to take their jobs. Now, of course, the Red Summer does not happen unless the wealthy in these cities urge the working class in these cities to kill and riot and destroy Black businesses and Black communities and Black homes, et cetera, so that these Black men and women, yes, in some cases women too, do not get the economic upper hand on these white working class communities. That's why it's called the Red Summer in Chicago. By the way, this is also during the time when we had the Great Migration. Not only were people coming back from fighting in World War I, but they were also migrating from the South to the North and out West, looking for greater and better opportunities for themselves. And they were getting it. And of course, this is the reason why we had the Red Summer in Chicago, in DC, in East St. Louis, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it's ridiculous. This is exactly what happened. Let's get to the next slide. So speaking of East St. Louis, of course, forgive me for the typo from the earlier slides. It's East St. Louis, Illinois in 1917, just like we saw in the Red Summer in Chicago, Illinois. We saw this in East St. Louis. And by the way, this one's a little bit different. This is actually during World War I. And a lot of people that were off fighting in Europe. I mean, not just African Americans, but a lot of other members of the white community were also fighting in World War I. And so in East St. Louis, they needed workers to come and work in these various factories where they didn't have a lot of workers to work in these factories, by the way, which were in some cases supporting the war effort. So they called in African-American workers to come and fill those jobs. Well, guess what? The white working class in East St. Louis was not having it. And if you just take a look at some of these headlines here, 24 Negroes killed in East St. Louis, several hundred Negroes brought across the river, Post-Dispatch man and eyewitness describes massacre of Negroes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This is from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch back in that day. Now, I want you to kind of, I don't know, close your eyes and think of a time wherever you lived. If you live in St. Louis, or if you ever lived or do live in East St. Louis, what's it like there now? Is it any different than what we were seeing in the St. Louis Post-Dispatch from 1917? You know, I met my wife, my lovely wife, Victoria, who is from St. Louis, and I lived in St. Louis for a while. And yes, I lived in St. Louis. I worked in the various industries in St. Louis. And I'm going to tell you straight up, by the way, this was back in the late 1990s to the early 2000s. You really had to work hard to get a decent job if you're a Black man in St. Louis. And of course, East St. Louis. As far as I'm concerned, nothing's changed. In fact, since the age of Trump, I would say that things have gotten worse. Not better, but have gotten worse. Maybe that they're not going out massacring and killing Black men because they wanted to get a job, but there are other ways to keep Black people at a distance. And that's kind of what they're doing right now. All right, so here we go. We got another video from Red Summer in Washington, D.C. of 1919. Of course, they'll talk about Red Summer across the globe. They'll talk about Chicago. They'll talk about D.C. But let's go ahead and watch this video.
The summer of 1919 is the crest of one of the most vicious years in American history. There are riots that could sweep the nation. They're not just Southern riots. Not only have segregation and the underlying ethos of Jim Crow gone national, but the commitment to reinforcing and defending them through terroristic violence is also national.
Jim Crow was following the Great Migration northward, and both had landed in Chicago. In the last 2 years alone, an estimated 50,000 Black people had arrived in the city, almost doubling Chicago's African-American population. New arrivals crowded up uneasily against a huge influx of immigrants fleeing Southern and Eastern Europe. Those European migrants were divided by religion, language, and ethnicity, but they held one thing in common: an antipathy toward Black people. Business owners exploited racial tensions, frequently using Black workers to undercut wages and break strikes.
Mayor Anderson travels to Chicago in 1919 as basically a powder keg. And it has many of the conditions that you'll see in cities across the country. There's pressure on housing. There's competition over jobs. There are returning soldiers, black and white. Black soldiers angry about their rule of law experience and convinced that they've earned their full citizenship rights. And white soldiers determined to keep African Americans from acting on their convictions.
On the afternoon of July 27th, 14-year-old Eugene Williams was killed when his raft drifted into the white section of the 29th Street beach. A policeman refused to arrest his assailant. Fights broke out between black and white bystanders.
The summer.
All right, so we want to thank PBS for bringing us that video. You know, as I present this to you, I am disheartened about our history. And in this particular case, this young 14-year-old kid who just was trying to go swimming drifts into the white side of the beach, and he's killed for it. Just by chance, a wave taking him to the white side of the beach. And he's killed for it. I am 66, going on 67 years old. I've been around a long time and I've seen a lot of hate in my day. But it's stories like this that really get to my heart and soul. Hate and white supremacy is the Achilles heel of this country. And it is the disease that is bringing the country down. And because of that, we need to take lessons for this Black community today from the past, from this lecture, from Greenwood and Rosewood and Chicago, East St. Louis, and Washington, D.C. We need to take lessons and put them into practice for us today. And the very first lesson that I have up here is unity. There is, in my opinion, no surviving the Trump years unless we unify as a community, the Black community. And there is only one way to eat an elephant, and that is one small piece at a time. Now, what the heck does that mean? It means this. I don't expect you to try and unify all of the Black community around this country. You're not going to be able to do that. But what you can do is unify your family unit. Okay? Start with your nuclear family and then extend that out to your extended family to affect financial change. Now, what does that mean, to affect financial change? Well, it means this. We need to be spending our hard-earned dollars within our community. We need to be taking that money that we're earning and we need to be spending that money in our community, the Black community. We need to be banking in the Black community. We need to be spending in the Black community. This is what we ought to be doing. We need to be saving our money. We need to work with other members of our family to save money, perhaps put it into a universal savings account or investment account for the whole family. You know, during Jim Crow, we were forced to have to depend on each other. And we did a really good job of doing that. We did. We depended on each other. I remember when I was a kid, oh my God, back in the 60s, I mean, that Maplewood Avenue, Wilkinsburg, PA, every kid on that street knew every other kid on that street, and every parent on that street knew every other parent on that street, and we all looked out for each other. That is a fact. So we need to be doing that again. And not only that, we need to affect financial change for our families and then expand that to engage your local church, synagogue, or mosque. I'm just putting all three of those in there because I don't know what kind of faith you have, right? So, yes, we need to build this wealth with other Black families within our community. This is what we ought to be doing. We need to patronize black banking systems and Black businesses to keep this exchange of economic prosperity in our community. Here in the Atlanta metro, we have a very large Korean American community, particularly out here in Duluth. I live out here in Lawrenceville. So out in this area, right out here in Gwinnett County, we have a very large Korean American community. And I'm going to tell you right now, they got Korean businesses all over the place. And you would have signs in English and in Korean. And these people are keeping their hard-earned dollars in their community. We need to be doing the exact same thing. Okay? We need to be doing the exact same thing. And I'm going to tell you right now, it will make a difference financially, because here's the other thing that we could be doing. We could be banking, we could be shopping here, we could be teaching each other about financial management, which by the way, is one of another lectures that we're going to be presenting to you, okay? We need to keep our dollars within the Black community. Now, when we talk about the Korean Americans here in Atlanta, when they spend money in the Korean community, that dollar that is spent in the Korean community stays within that community for well over a couple of weeks. For the Black community right now, that dollar stays in the Black community for less than an hour. Less than an hour. We are not at the moment looking out for each other. And that's what we need to be doing. We also need to expand this engagement with your community and then expand across your city, town, state, and country. That's how we do it. Like I said, to eat an elephant one small piece at a time, start with your family. Again, with your extended family, your church, your synagogue, your mosque, and then expand that out so that it becomes an all-encompassing community where we are all looking after each other. And here in 2025, unlike in 1925, we got a better chance of defending ourselves if somebody decides to come after us. Okay? After all, it is 2025. Okay? But defend what is ours. And we need to start depending on each other right now. So I took the liberty to kind of give you an idea or show you where Black-owned banks and credit unions are. Here's a short video. I want to show this to you right now.
I took two things that I love.
Again, we'll get rid of these ads, so just give me a moment.
Hi, I'm Ronnie.
You know, we are definitely in support of the Bank Black movement. And the Bank Black movement is more successful than any protest that we have ever done as of recent. Now, you can get in the street all day and you can say Black Lives Matter, which they do. But while you screaming Black Lives Matter, while you have agitators that show up in the crowds, try to throw things at police, trying to get them to start firing or being violent toward protesters, you get nothing done at all when you go out there to screaming. You can do die-ins, you can do all this stuff that you want to do. Nothing is happening. But when the Black people of America said we are tired of funding our oppression. When we have said that, you know what, it is insanity to sit here and cry about racism, cry about oppression, yet giving our money to the very people who are doing this to us. Now we got our heads together finally, and we're going to start moving our funds from banks that have been caught in all kind of racial discrimination lawsuits, caught giving us adjustable rate mortgages while they gave white people regular mortgages, and how we lost a lot of our homes, how these companies like Bank of America, your Chase, Wells Fargo, how they invest millions of dollars in the private prisons, which also affect our oppression. We can no longer bank with people that wants to subjugate and oppress us and has been sued by the federal government for discrimination. So what we decided to do based upon the killings of Philando Castile, Alton Sterling, and every other brother and sister that lost their life due to police brutality, and they refused to give us justice. We said that if you refuse to give us justice, you're not going to get our black dollars. So we start removing our black dollars from these banks and start going to the black-owned banks. Now, as you see, a lot of people have been asking, where can I find a black-owned bank? And the issue that I've seen in the black-owned banks is they don't invest a whole lot of money in the marketing. And what I'm going to do is I'm definitely going to have a meeting with someone at Union Bank and tell them what can we do to partner so we can start spreading the word at least about Union Bank here in Houston, and maybe we try to get in contact with some other.
So I just wanted to go ahead and give you just a little clip, a little snippet of what this brother is talking about. But if you take a look at the map here, there's a black-owned bank in every state of the union. All you got to do is go to wherever you live in your state, go into Google and see where black-owned banks or credit unions are in your state. There are black-owned banks and credit unions in every state of this union. And I live here in Atlanta, Georgia, and there is several in this area that you can bank at. So just do a little homework and you'll find a black-owned bank and see if you putting your hard-earned money into that bank, checking accounts or savings account or CDs or whatever you're looking to do, and patronize that bank. And then if you want to start a small business, buy a home, these banks will be able to take care of you and put you on the right path to home ownership or starting a business. Stop giving your money to those who despise you and take your money and use it against you. Just like the brother said, we need to stop doing that. Okay, let's move on.
The banks.
All right, so this is our last slide that I wanted to share with you. Of course, this is the Atlanta. I'm glad I live in this city. I'm not going to lie. So there's a lot going on in the Atlanta metro. And so I have a video up here of Atlanta's Black Wall Street. This is right near where I live, not too far from where I live. So let's go ahead and start the video and see what these folks are talking about. And I guarantee you, depending on where you live, you probably have a district or several districts in your towns or cities of where you live where there is a concentration of black-owned businesses, and it's time to start patronizing these businesses so that we can keep our dollars within our community and growing our communities financially. So let's watch the video.
They're implementing another work platform again.
I'll skip this commercial here soon.
Yeah, came from Memphis over here. That's what it is. Keith Levy waited 2 years for the new Black Wall Street Market in Stonecrest, Georgia to finally open its doors.
I like the artwork and the pictures and definitely some of the food and spices.
He's one of the more than 10,000 people who checked out the new Black Wall Street Market, a 125,000 square foot hub of African American commerce that stands as a 21st century homage to the original Black Wall Street that was destroyed by white mobs in Tulsa, Oklahoma 100 years ago. The market, which is about 16 miles east of Atlanta, occupies what was once a Super Target building across the street from Stonecrest Mall. As lines filled the food court, a nearby vendor was busy selling books by Black authors. Merchants are seen selling a wide array of clothing, some of it commonly worn in parts of Africa, full of bright colors and patterns. To the By Nine inspired gear, doused in pink and green or red and black. Tons of art fill the walkways, some of it featuring illustrations of African villages, while others showcase African royalty.
Make me a movie star.
There's plenty of jewelry on display, including pieces freshly polished by Baba Adams of Universal Love Jewelry, who's been in business for 50 years.
Right, actually being here, I'm jumping for joy. Just to do something to support us as a people is always good, always good. So I'm really glad to be a part of the opening.
For 22-year-old entrepreneur Trinity Ross, her booth is the first in-person store she's had since she started her company in 2018 selling organic soap products. She spent opening day focusing on setting up her shop to calm her nerves.
I was very stressed and nervous about how everything was going to turn out.
Ross's booth is down the Madam C.J. Walker wing of the market, alongside other health and beauty vendors. Seeing people coming to the market from Atlanta to Tennessee and beyond gives Ross reason to believe her customer base will grow exponentially in no time.
It's amazing. I have family that came in all the way from St. Louis to come see my store and to get the experience of the Black Wall Street Market. So I believe it could be a new tourist spot for the city.
Sharice McWhorter is a co-founder of Zoet Beauty Supply. The location of the new Black Wall Street Market is the second location of her business, and she and her business partner are excited about the possibilities.
My customers, the people that frequent my business, are 90-something% Black. And so why not be in the market for my people, by my people?
Despite experiencing months-long delays in opening due to a rise in COVID-19 cases in the metro Atlanta area earlier this year, the grand opening already appears to be accomplishing one of its goals, serving as a hub for Black entrepreneurs. Reporting for Atlanta Black Star, I'm Cavante Smalls.
All right, so there you go. That's our lecture for today. And thank you for tuning in from Where I Sit. Final comment before I leave you. It's important for us, even if we were able to beat back this fascist dictatorship that is trying to take over the country. And make no mistake about it, they're doing that. They are really trying to do that. And they are succeeding, right? It is up to us to fight back. And even if we are successful in doing so, I believe that it is still absolutely necessary for us in the Black community to look after each other. Let's say, for the sake of argument, that Trumpism is killed and we're able to get this country back to normal, et cetera, et cetera. It is still very important for us as the Black community to look after each other. Yes, we have made some gains since the civil rights movements back in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. And yes, some of those gains are under threat right now. And by the way, that is always going to happen. The gains that we've gotten throughout the ages are always going to be under threat. As long as hate thrives in this country, the gains that we as the Black community have gotten are always going to be under threat, which is the reason why it's important for us to be a cohesive unit, a cohesive community where we look out for each other. That is our lecture for today. Thank you from Where I Sit. Again, as always, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. By the way, we have 10 subscribers. I know it's not a whole lot, but it's a milestone for us here from Where I Sit. So our next goal is 15. All we need to get is 5 more subscribers. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and share these videos with everybody you know. And you guys have a great afternoon until our next video.